Wolves win, moving to 6-2 on the season, picking up their first win on the road, establishing a now 5-game winning streak with the 7-point win on the road against the San Antonio Spurs, playing in their first in-season tournament game. It's also the Timberwolves' first look at Victor Wembanyama, who lives up to all of the hype. I am not shocked by this by any stretch. I've been watching them a lot this year. The Spurs are probably the NBA team I've watched the second most of behind the Timberwolves so far this year. And Wemby is just nuts. Every single game you watch him, he is doing something that you're like, I didn't know humans could do that on the basketball court. Plenty of plays like that in this one. Really absurd stuff. When he was at the top of the zone in this game, just the length that players have to deal with is insane. His alley-oop window is just bigger than anyone's ever has been, and he's so coordinated that he doesn't have to have the timing so clean. And you saw a lot of reverse dunks on alley-oops just so smoothly. Pull-up game, nuts, and he is so good. And even though the Spurs are now 3-6 after this loss, they're a respectable team. I would say they're still trying things out. They're trying to mold things together, but they've got some good players. And one that has been out the last couple games that they've lost, but was in tonight, was Devin Vassell, who got the bag this summer, and he is a tremendous player as well. Big-time shooter, big-time scorer, and he complements Wemby extremely well. He would have 29 points along with Wemby in this game. Also, Trey Jones this year has really stepped it up, an Apple Valley product, and his handle is so clean, always makes the right plays, bust his ass every time he's on the court, and made things a little scary there in the fourth quarter, making some big hustle energy plays that were kind of leading the comeback for the Spurs in this fourth quarter, which you wouldn't have thought they would maybe even need if you were watching the first quarter in this one. Very flat start out of the Timberwolves. I thought Karl Anthony Towns' energy in the first couple minutes was really concerning. Had a couple turnovers, chaotic plays, although he would end up having a good night and a little less destructive than his last game, where he still shot the ball well, and he won this one too. And his defense was really good in this one again. He has stabilized a lot on the defensive end, especially when he can play more of that center role. Rudy Gobert also continues his tremendous defensive run. He's been playing overall very solidly for us. I liked his matchup against Wemby too, actually. He held his own in that one. Also had some good offensive, just drop step hook plays that he got buckets on, a couple dunks. And Gobert continues his really solid start to the year. But most of this game early on, the Timberwolves could not find it offensively. Really stale, missing a lot of open shots. But the guards actually mostly showed up to kind of keep things even, to the point where we would actually have a 2-point lead going into half, which I felt very fortunate to have. And also our defense is so good that we're able to just not let things get away too much. And a lot of what the Spurs' offensive production was early on was more so points in transition, which they would have a lot more than we did. And that's because we turned the ball over a lot. 18 turnovers for the Wolves in this game compared to 14 for an extremely young, inexperienced Spurs team that's also running Jeremy Sohan at point. And that's an experiment for them too, although that wouldn't be too bad for them in certain stretches. He's just so much bigger than Mike Conley, which would be his matchup a lot of times. And we got punished by that early on, but then Wolves ran a lot of zone defense in this one. And I really liked how that countered the Sohan point guard role, and it kind of nullified the mismatches that the Spurs had on the court with all their size, even though we're such a big team too. And our zone has looked pretty good. It's nice to have that to sprinkle into the already number 1 ranked defense in the NBA. And it's just kind of another weapon that we can introduce. Other weapons that we can usually introduce off the bench. Kyle Anderson. I usually am just hyped up about this guy every game. Not this one. I think he ended with 4 turnovers. 3 of those are in the first half, and uncharacteristically just terrible passes and plays. He didn't really have it tonight, although he would have a couple zone-busting plays in the second half that were better. But overall, not a good slow-mo game. Naz Reid, also a weaker night than usual, but the concerning part was more that he had a layup that he missed and fell on the ground. He hits his head into the stanchion, kind of flatly sliding into it, and so he had what they said were neck spasms and was questionable to return to the game. So hopefully Naz is okay. He didn't go into that stanchion with extreme speed and force, but when you just hit an immovable object straight with your head, that's going to be concerning regardless. Bench player of the night would probably have to go to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, though. A little bit better offensive production from him, and also still just super active hands, which is really wonderful to see on a consistent basis from him as well. Mike Conley would deviate a little bit from his non-turnover ways. He had the 1 turnover total in 7 games. He had 4 tonight and was not as clean on that end. And then the big, painful problem of Jaden McDaniels in foul trouble reared its head yet again. Another game fouling out. He picked up 3 in the first half, then picked up 2 off-ball fouls in the second half that were pretty idiotic. His 6th foul, I thought, was a horrible call by the Insukkurime and was undeserving, but Jaden's just getting himself in trouble, owned a kicking, and that really has to reverse. He's such an important player, but he's constantly not on the court. And also, he can't platize his offensive game as much. Offense is so much a thing about flow, kind of being involved, having the touches, and he just can't get that in so many games because his minutes are just chopped up from sitting on the bench, always being in foul trouble, trying to be saved for matchups when it's important, and he just keeps kind of ruining the potential to improve those aspects of his game in pertinent game moments because of the fouls, and he just can't be on the court. Stop! Haven't talked about him much yet, but I guess I saved the best for last. Anthony Edwards. He is that guy. So many steadying plays for us. He's become a legit closer. I'm so confident in his ability to make a play when we need one. When he's locked in and focused, I just don't feel like anyone can really match what he can do. And he has that trump card where he just pulls out ridiculous plays that almost no one else can do. And you need that, especially in a league that more of those people are kind of propping up. We played one tonight. A young one. Wemby's going to take a little bit of time to get to the level where it's going to result in a ton of winning, but it's not going to be a lot. And this league is getting more and more talented, and so the margin of error, shrinking. But you need an absolute superstar. Timberwolves have that. Anthony Edwards. Oh, it feels nice. Not a super impressive game, though I do respect the Spurs, but we saw this so many times where they would start out slow against an opponent they're supposed to beat, and they just would never be able to fully recover. Wolves were able to do so tonight, shows a little bit of maturity. Not going to complain with 6-2, looking good.